In the headlines, President Park Geun-hye wraps up her four-nation Middle East tour, a chance to solidify Seoul's economic cooperation with the region that's looking to diversify its growth points. Two heroines from Korea's 2014 ferry disaster are remembered and honored in the United States for sacrificing their lives to save others. And Russian authorities make 5 arrests in the ongoing investigation into the murder of Boris Nemtsov, an outspoken critic of the Kremlin. Hello and welcome to ARIRANG News. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I am Kang Chery. We begin with President Park Geun-hye's week-long trip to the Middle East, which took her to Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. She's returned to Korea with prospects for stronger and much more active cooperation with the region. Our Choi San takes us through some of the big achievements from the presidential trip.
Speaking to reporters en route to Seoul, President Park said she felt that Korea's vision for revitalizing the economy through greater economic cooperation with the Middle East is being realized. President Park said that one of the biggest achievements from her trip was helping small to mid-sized Korean firms strike business deals in the region's so-called new industries. In fact, one-on-one business sessions in each of the 4 countries, many of which were attended by SMEs, resulted in 44 bilateral agreements totaling $900 million. The agreements expand existing oil and construction-centered cooperation into the fields of nuclear energy, agriculture, healthcare, ICT, and culture. These post-oil era initiatives, the president said, are in line with Seoul's economic innovation plan.
Previously energy-focused, these countries have started seeking multi-dimensional development, and that's helped us rediscover the Middle East and encourage the region to once again recognize Korea as an important partner.
As for the specific areas of cooperation, the presidential office listed Korea's first export of its creative economy model to Saudi Arabia, a deal between Korea and the UAE to develop Korea's halal industry, and an establishment of a cultural center in Abu Dhabi. The presidential office said dozens of deals were made mainly because Koreans' expertise, credibility, and hardworking style have helped build trust in the region.
그렇지만 국가 간의 신뢰를 중시 여기고 우리가 노력해 나간다면 중도금 그걸로 인해서 제2의 이제 부흥도 일으킬 수 있다고 많은 믿음을 갖고 하게 됐습니다.
To sustain the momentum, Seoul plans to monitor the progress of the deals with these 4 countries and boost cooperation to ensure they are implemented. Choi San, ARIRANG News.
And immediately upon arriving in Seoul, President Park went to visit U.S. Ambassador to South Korea, Mark Lippert, who is, by the way, making a fast recovery from last week's knife attack, is expected to be discharged from the hospital tomorrow afternoon. Our Hwang Sung-hee has more.
Doctors say Ambassador Lippert will likely be out of the hospital by Tuesday afternoon. The U.S. envoy needed 80 stitches on his face and arm following a brutal knife attack last week in central Seoul.
We are planning to remove half the stitches this morning and the other half tomorrow morning. If there's no problem, he'll leave the hospital tomorrow afternoon.
The 55-year-old assailant, Kim Ki-jong, who is now under arrest, was protesting the ongoing joint military drills between Seoul and Washington. The attack raised concerns about whether it would leave a dent in relations between the 2 allies. But President Park Geun-hye, visiting the ambassador on Monday, said his handling of the incident had strengthened the alliance.
대사님이 의연하고 또 담대하게 이렇게 대처하시는 모습을 보고 미국과 한국 양국의 국민들이 큰 감동을 받았습니다. 오히려 한미 관계가 더 가까워지는 계기가 되고 있다고 생각합니다.
President Park headed over to the hospital upon her return from the Middle East, saying she was saddened by the news since she too was a victim of a similar attack back in 2006. The doctors treating Ambassador Lippert say he is in good spirits and eager to get back to work as soon as possible. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
And as for the ambassador's assailant, Kim Ki-jong, North Korea has slammed South Korea for labeling him and his actions as pro-North Korean. North Korea's Nodong Shinmun newspaper said Monday that Seoul is trying to justify U.S. attempts to put Pyongyang back on its list of state sponsors of terrorism. After last week's attack, North Korean media hailed the slashing as, quote, deserved punishment for U.S. hostilities. Seoul authorities are currently investigating whether Mr. Kim may have also violated the national security law, which bans South Koreans from publicly supporting the North Korean government. And staying with North Korea, there's growing speculation that North Korea is advancing its nuclear ambitions, a speculation strong enough to urge the U.S. administration to pay more attention to the situation in North Korea. Our Kim Myung-gil has more.
North Korea is seeking to build ever better nuclear weapons, and the Washington Post says the growing evidence of that should prompt the Obama administration to take action to stop it. But the U.S. may already be moving in that direction. A separate report by Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency citing diplomatic sources in Washington says the U.S. might push for direct talks with North Korea next month and could use its international clout to stop the North from upgrading its nuclear capabilities. The sources note, however, that the Iranian nuclear issue is more of a priority for Washington now. The Post cites U.S. researchers who say the North nuclear weapons program has gathered momentum and that it could expand rapidly over the next 5 years. A recent report by the U.S. Korea Institute at the School of Advanced International Studies of Johns Hopkins University, based on data from the Institute for Science and International Security, concludes that Pyongyang could increase its stockpile of 10 to 16 nuclear warheads and expand it to 100 in the worst case by 2020. The report highlights the North's efforts to upgrade its technologies to produce road mobile and solid fuel missiles. Most of North Korea's missiles use liquid fuel. Still, many technological uncertainties remain, including how much fissile material North Korea can produce and whether scientists or engineers can overcome the steep technical challenges. Despite the challenges, Pyongyang has surprised the international community before with its nuclear capabilities, such as by revealing a uranium enrichment plant in 2010. The report advises having a clear-eyed view of the North's nuclear weapons capabilities to keep the North in check. Kim Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Nearly a year has passed since the sinking of the Seoul ferry. The tragedy left more than 300 people, most of them high school students, dead or missing. Efforts to honor the victims and the heroes have continued not only here in Korea, but also in the U.S., where 2 heroines were awarded a special prize for sacrificing their lives to save others. Our Kwon So-ah has the story.
It's a medal they will never wear. 2 young women who sacrificed their lives to save passengers on the ill-fated Seoul ferry were awarded gold medallions at a chapel in Philadelphia on Sunday for their acts of bravery in last year's disaster. Choi Hae-jung was a teacher at Tanwon High School, which is where the more than 320 students on the ferry were enrolled. They were on a class trip to Jeju Island. Choi is said to have gone down with the ship to save as many people as possible. Park Ji-young was a member of the crew who reportedly saved around 50 passengers before she died, handing them life vests without leaving one for herself.
We will think of the prize as an honor given to us by our children and will live our lives in proud service of society.
The 4 Chaplains Memorial Foundation is a non-profit established by U.S. President Harry Truman in 1951 in remembrance of 4 chaplains who went down with a torpedoed cruise ship during World War II after saving other passengers and giving up their own life vests.
We feel that this act by the 2 young ladies, Ms. Choi and Ms. Park, is directly related to the sacrifice of the 4 chaplains.
Former U.S. Presidents Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan are also among those who have received the prize for their service to the public. Choi and Park are the first Koreans to be given the award, which now stands as a reminder to people around the world of the sacrifices made on April 16, 2014. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
A law revision that requires daycare centers to install security cameras was voted down last week at the National Assembly, but the ruling party has vowed to pass the revision in the upcoming extraordinary session coming up next month. Lawmakers who objected to the bill say it would be a violation of privacy and an infringement of daycare teachers' rights. The ruling party says it will rework the bill to address the privacy concerns and reintroduce it during next month's session. This comes after public demand for the legislation grew following a string of child abuse cases at daycare centers in recent months. Latest data shows Korea's lowest legal wage is neither that high nor that low compared to other OECD countries. According to numbers released by Economic and Social Development Commission and Korea Employers Federation on Monday, the annual minimum wage stood at just over $12,000 in 2013, ranking Korea 14th out of the 25 OECD member countries surveyed. However, workers and labor unions in Korea say the minimum wage is not something that can be compared only by looking at those numbers and not something that should be compared with other countries. They say there's a huge imbalance between corporate earnings and household income and that the current minimum wage fails to meet even the standard cost of living. The Korean government is planning to focus on boosting domestic demand in the first half of this year amid deflationary pressures. One of the ways it plans to achieve that goal is to inject $9 billion into the economy. Our Shin Se-min has the details.
The government will spend the money in its Economic Revitalization Fund earmarked for the entire year, or roughly $9 billion in the first half of the year. The decision comes amid a growing urgency to help lift the economy out of the doldrums. The money is from the $41 billion revitalization fund set up by the finance ministry last year, according to the ministry official. The nation's economic outlook is still foggy. The latest corporate sentiment index hit a 6-month low last month as local companies are anxious about the unfavorable business conditions. And the consumer sentiment index? It's still lower than the level recorded last May, right after a drop in consumer sentiment following the Seoul ferry disaster in April. The state-run Korea Institute of Public Finance says that allocating a larger chunk of the fund in the first half of the year will help grow the economy by 0.23 percentage points as opposed to dispersing it evenly throughout the year. With the move, the government hopes to garner investment, create more jobs, and stimulate domestic spending to prevent the economy from falling into a deflationary period. And the government also said that it aims to carry out structural reforms while pressing large conglomerates to raise the minimum wage to revive the economy. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has repeatedly emphasized the need to raise the minimum wage. But not everyone seems to agree, as Samsung Electronics, considered a key player in corporate Korea, has recently decided to freeze its wages. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
For this week's Industry Insight, we take a look at Korea's animated character market. The industry has made huge strides forward in recent years. ARIRANG's Kim Min-ji tells us exactly where Korea stands and also about what it can do to reach the next level.
This 90-second cartoon featuring two larvae and their quirky adventures inside a drain is entertaining enough to attract viewers both young and old, even without dialogue. Created by Tuba Entertainment in 2011, Larva is now broadcast in over 100 countries and has been made into more than 1,000 products.
From the early stages of development, we focused on multinationalization. Body language is somewhat universal, so we could easily create a sensation across different markets.
But it's just one of few success stories. Korea has a relatively short history in the character business and lacks infrastructure and global networks. On top of this, there's still a deep-rooted perception that cartoon characters are just for kids.
Disney's Frozen is an example of an animation that can be enjoyed by the whole family. Korean characters need to target people of all ages, as a larger consumer base will boost the market.
So where does Korea's industry stand?
The local character market has grown over 60% in the last 5 years, and it's expected to top $8 billion this year. But despite the exponential growth, it makes up less than 5% of the global market.
Analysts say the government needs to open communication channels for local companies to connect with distributors and licensors from around the world. Case in point, the Culture Ministry plans to invest $350 million into the character and animation industries over the next 5 years.
From the fostering of artists to facilitating production and exports, we plan to provide companies with comprehensive assistance.
Roy Visual, creator of hit animated TV show Robocar Polly, says the drive is sure to boost Korea's potential.
Korea has the manpower, so with systematic support for the process of creating a character or animation, local companies will be able to create stronger and better content.
With the right reinforcements and time, experts say Korea will be able to produce characters as iconic as Mickey Mouse. Kim In-ji, ARIRANG News.
Authorities in Russia have made 5 arrests in the ongoing investigation into the murder of Boris Nemtsov, an outspoken critic of the Kremlin. To tell us more, Paul Lee is joining us from the News Center. Paul, the killing of Russia's leading opposition activist continues to stir controversy. What details have authorities released on these men?
Well, all 5 suspects are said to be Chechen from Russia's predominantly Muslim Northern Caucasus. 2 of them, including an ex-policeman, have been charged with murder by a Moscow court. However, Nemtsov's closest allies are rejecting the narrative that his death was the result of religious extremism, but rather a politically motivated terror attack. ARIRANG's Kang Chery reports.
A Moscow court has charged 2 men accused of plotting to kill Russian opposition leader Boris Nemtsov, an outspoken Kremlin critic. Zaur Dadayev, a former police officer who fought Islamic insurgents, admitted he was involved in the killing, while the second suspect, Anzor Gubashev, pleaded innocent. Russian state television showed the men's arrival in court wearing handcuffs and covering their faces. 3 other suspects have been jailed. And all 5 men are of Chechen origin, which could potentially be a sensitive issue in Russia, as many Russians view Chechens as violent extremists. A 6th suspect reportedly blew himself up with a grenade in a standoff with police in the Chechen capital of Grozny. Nemtsov was assassinated in late February, days before he was set to address a major anti-government rally. He was also to publish a report on the Russian military's involvement in the war in Ukraine, despite Moscow's denial that it has supplied separatists with troops and weapons. The biggest question now is who ordered Nemtsov's assassination. Some of his supporters have gone so far as to say the Russian government was behind the killing. Russian officials deny that, and President Vladimir Putin has condemned the killing and pledged to do everything to find and prosecute the killers. Nemtsov's shooting is the most high-profile killing of an opposition figure since Putin came to power in 2000. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And over to Africa now. The Nigerian extremist group Boko Haram has purportedly pledged its allegiance to the leaders of the self-declared Islamic State. These are 2 dangerous groups, both waging a war in the name of Islam in their respective countries. What's been the reaction to this potential alliance?
Well, analysts say this allegiance pledged by Boko Haram militants comes as no surprise. The IS leadership has already accepted similar pledges from other jihadist groups in the Middle East, from Afghanistan to Pakistan, as well as in North Africa. An audio clip posted on Twitter Sunday is believed to be the voice of Boko Haram's leader. In it, he pledges loyalty to IS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and declares him as Caliph of the Muslim world. But regardless of this latest partnership, many in Nigeria believe Boko Haram's days are numbered.
There will be peace in this country, and Boko Haram will be a thing of the past. We've had things like that before, like Maitasini and the rest. They were all overcome by our military and the police. So we believe this time around we are going to win the war against them. Whether they are affiliated to ISIS or not, they'll be eliminated.
Meanwhile, military sources on the ground reportedly said a major aerial and ground offensive is underway against Boko Haram near Nigeria's border with Niger.
And it's been a year since the Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 vanished on its way to Beijing, carrying 239 passengers and crew. And still, Paul, not a single trace has been found of this missing plane. It must be an incredibly emotional time for relatives of the victims. How are they coping with all this?
Well, many of them chose to hold a very simple ceremony on Sunday, which marked the first anniversary since MH370 disappeared. But support groups for the families emphasized it was not a memorial, but rather an event to remember their loved ones. The ceremony in Kuala Lumpur brought together Malaysians, Chinese, and other nationalities, as well as Malaysia Airlines staff. In a separate commemoration in Sydney, Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott raised hopes that there's still a chance in finding the lost plane.
Well, it can't go on forever, but as long as there are reasonable leads, the search will go on. We've got 60,000 square kilometres that is the subject of this search. If that's unsuccessful, there's another 60,000 square kilometres that we intend to search. And as I said, we are reasonably confident of finding the plane.
A near 600-page interim report released by Malaysia showed that the plane's captain and crew were mentally sound. They also found that the battery of one of the flight black box recorders expired more than a year before the fateful flight. Grieving family members in China called the report meaningless, saying it offered no new evidence, nor did it cast doubts on what has been declared an accident.
Certainly frustrating, to say the least. Now, finally, in Japan, tens of thousands have protested government plans to relaunch the country's nuclear industry nearly 4 years after the Fukushima disaster. Despite this, Paul, though, the Shinzo Abe administration has been pushing hard to get Japan's nuclear reactors back online. Why is this?
Well, one of the main reasons experts are pointing to is a massive spike in energy costs since Japan has had to import expensive fossil fuels to replace atomic power, which is placing a heavy burden on its fragile economy. On Sunday, organizers say about 23,000 people joined in the major rally in Tokyo's government district. They surrounded Japan's parliament, demanding that the permanent decommission of all nuclear plants across the country and even Asia.
The recovery effort in Fukushima Daiichi is making no progress as they keep contaminating the ocean and fail to bring the situation under control. In fact, it's getting worse in many respects. We want to tell the world that the Fukushima nuclear accident has never ended and it continues to affect all of us.
The protest comes just days ahead of the commemorations to mark the 4-year anniversary since the deadly 2011 tsunami was triggered the meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi power plant. According to national polls, roughly 2/3 of Japanese have shown consistent opposition to restarting the suspended nuclear reactors. Chery?
All right, Paul, thank you so much. Let's leave it there for now, but we will see you again in just about 2 hours.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather outlook. So make sure to bundle up if you're headed out because it is getting colder by the hour. In fact, a cold wave watch has been issued for most parts of the country, while wind chills are making it feel about 7 degrees colder than the actual numbers. And at the moment, it is mostly clear skies, but there is a possibility of showers down south. So through tomorrow evening, about 5 to 20 millimeters of precipitation is expected for the mountains of Jeju, while up to 3 centimeters of snow is also expected there. Now, it looks like about a centimeter will fall on the western coast of both Jeollado provinces. Looking ahead, chillier conditions will continue to stick around for a while, along with a big gap in temperatures between the day and night. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul dips to -7 in the morning before reaching 2 in the afternoon. Daegu and Gwangju 2, Busan hits 7. Meanwhile, Daejeon hits 0, Jeju 3, Dokdo peaks at 1, Mount Kumgang remains colder. Those are the updates I have for you now. I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much, Po Kyung, and that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.